evening, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning to the viewers that I know are watching from New Zealand. It's lovely to see you all here, some with your masks on, some not, because some of you are drinking. So I'm going to say it's lovely to see all your smiley faces, because I bet you're smiling behind your masks. And for those that I can't see out there somewhere, it's lovely to see your smiley faces, and please pay attention. Welcome to the Barn Theatre, and welcome to the first of our talks, which will be shown to you over the next few weeks now until after Christmas. And this is a first for us. So while you are sat here, there are another 30 people or more watching at home, comfy on their settees, in the bath, lying in their beds, or wherever you may choose to be. And so this evening's little chat with you is called Housework Won't Kill You, but Why Take the Chance? And I would say that is so true. And so, if 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose the walrus said that they could get it clear? Oh, I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. Every other year I'm commissioned to do a talk for the Royston Pike lecture series, which is held in Esher. And every year, and they are run by Elmbridge Borough Council, and every year they say, Mags, could you do a talk for us? And I say yes, and the next sentence is, what are you going to talk about? My mind goes blank. And then I look around the house for all the little postcards I have that say, like this one, Housework Won't Kill You, but Why Take the Chance? And another one is, and I have forgotten it, but I saw this one, Housework Won't Kill You, Why Take the Chance? And I thought, that will be fun. I'll do the research on that. It will be great fun. I'll find lots of funny things and things to laugh about. No. It was all serious. A very strong feminist point of view came through with all the research I did. There were papers written by universities, there were studies, etc., and nowhere was there anything humorous about domesticity. You know, the sort of thing, it was heavy, ponderous, meaningful, intelligent, cultural, enlightening, and educational, and all the things that I am not. So I thought, well, I've told them now, it's been advertised, Housework Won't Kill You, I've got to write something. And so, within the research, I found bits and pieces, and it's the bits and pieces that I'm going to present to you tonight. So, Housework Won't Kill You, but Why Take the Chance, which incidentally is a quote by that wonderful American comedian, Phyllis Diller. You know, the one who met her husband at a party and he'd only got one tooth and it was very long and she kept trying to light it, thinking it was a cigarette. Anyway, we will be exploring what is actually meant by home and in more detail, domesticity. Okay, so let's start with home. So what is home? We all think we know what is home, and this is a deceptively simple question. Is it the place where you were born? Is it where you happen to live right now? Does it have to be a dwelling, or can it be a spot on the landscape, or even a state of mind? And one of the first things we often ask someone when we meet them right after we've learned their name is, so where's home for you? Where do you live? And for many of us, our homes are part of our self-definition, which is why we do things like we decorate our houses and we fill them with possessions and so on. And our homes are the public face that we put on, displaying our homes as an extension of ourselves. What is a home? A guarded space wherein a few, all fairly blessed, shall sit together, face to face, and bask and purr, and be at rest. So, If an archaeologist had to pick, this is serious. If an archaeologist had to pick an example of the earliest structures that most resembled our modern idea of home, it would probably be the round houses built by the semi-sedentary Natufians. That's a good name, the Natufians. And they were an ancient people who lived around the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea, Syria, Israel and those environs at the end of the last ice age, 12,000 years ago. Now, the end of this ice age was a time of transition from hunter-gatherer mode of subsistence to an agricultural way of life, because before then, all the civilizational people, they were on the move, continually on the move. And why were they on the move? They were hunting their food. So wherever the bears went, wherever the cows were, if they had cows then, or they were following them to kill them, to eat them. But they decided to adopt a fixed residence. And that went hand in hand with cultivating fields and domesticating these animals that they had been for hundreds of years before, following. But becoming dependent on the crops they grew meant that people found themselves vulnerable to the elements, to the environment. They needed a permanent shelter. The rain didn't fall and the sun didn't shine at the farmer's convenience, so they needed this shelter. And this decision to stay in one place, at least for part of the year, was a seismic change from a nomadic way of life. And dwellings of this kind were generally grouped into villages, and that were to house about 150 inhabitants. And here they would almost certainly felt as if they were at home. And I think we can agree that a house just on its own is not a home. It's these that occupy that space that make it a home. And Dionne Warwick said, a house is not a home unless there's someone there. You see how clever she was. Now, Samuel Johnson, you know Samuel Johnson, the famous person who did stuff? He defined the word home in his dictionary, oh yes, that's what he did, in his dictionary of the English language of 1755, very concretely as his own house, his private dwelling. He included the phrase, close to one's own breast or affairs. And in doing so, he was reflecting what we can see as the many layered meanings of that Natuvian village, which tied the notion of a place to the more abstract feeling of belonging to a social group that anchors individuals' human identities. However deep in history, human history, its emotional or economic underpinnings may run, the complexity and the ideas about home that we cherish today are the invention of a Homo sapiens species alone. Nobody else, no other animal has a home. We are the only ones who have a home. So the idea of home has many layers of meaning, symbolism and emotion. The family home, the meaning of the most commonly understood, a place of warmth and most of all, security. Happiness doesn't lie in conspicuous consumption and the relentless amassing of useless bloody crap. Happiness lies in the person sitting beside you and your ability to talk to them. Happiness is a clear-headed human interaction and empathy. Happiness is home. And that was written by Dennis Lehane. And Dorothy, there's no place like home. And winter is the time for comfort, for good food and warmth, for the touch of a friendly hand, and for a talk beside the fire. It is the time for home. Edith Sitwell. The ache for home lives in all of us. The safe place where we can go as we are and will not be questioned. Maya Angelou. And home is a place where you grow up wanting to leave and grow old wanting to go back. By the way, an attic is where you store all the crap you'd throw away if you didn't have one. Home is where the mortgage usually is. And home is the place where you have to go there. When you want to go there, they have to let you in. Philip Larkin, wonderful poet. Home is so sad. This short piece was completed on New Year's Eve in 1958 while Philip Larkin was staying with his mum in his mum's house in Loughborough during the Christmas holidays. He always went home to his mother for Christmas in Loughborough. And he was often inspired to write some of his most moving poems about home whilst visiting his mum. And this is one of his clearest poems written on this theme. And take note of this poem's concluding two words, making a moving and powerful poem about home and about memories of your home when you were younger. Home is so sad. It stays as it was when I left, shaped to the comfort of the last to go. As if to win them back, instead bereft of anyone to please, it withers, having no heart to put aside the theft and turn again to what it started as, a joyous shout of how things ought to be, long fallen wide. You can see how it was. Look at the pictures, look at the cutlery, the music in the piano stool, that vase. A home means different things to all of us. The home is where we eat, sleep, relax, play, entertain, and goodness knows what else, but you can keep that all to yourselves. And it has to be looked after. In other words, it has to be dusted and washed and swept and cleared and sorted and tidied and upheld, maintained, cherished, adored, loved, made welcomed, cooked in, made safe and secure, keep ordered, desirable, etc., etc., etc. And all this comes under the one glorious word that fits all. And that is domesticity, i.e., life as it is lived at home. Home life, fondness for home, household matters, the concerns of the family. The culture of domesticity, or in other words, the cult of true womanhood, and this is the crux of the home, is a term that was used to describe a sort of best value system among the upper and middle classes during the 19th century. This value system emphasised ideas of femininity, determining a woman's role within the home and the dynamics of work and family. A middle-class family in 1830 came to look at itself and at the nuclear family in general as the backbone of its society. Kin and community remained very important. A new ideal of womanhood and a new ideology about the house and the home arose out of the new attitudes about work and family. This cult of domesticity is found in women's magazines, advice books, religious journals, newspapers and fiction of that time. In fact, it was everywhere then in popular culture. And this new ideal provided a new view of women's duty and their role. True women, according to this idea, were supposed to possess 4 cardinal virtues. So Here we go, ladies. And the gentlemen amongst you here in the audience and those out viewing, I don't want you to get above yourselves, and I don't want you to get excited, and above all, I want you to keep calm and to bear in mind that we are in 2020, okay? So I don't want to hear any of your male hormones rustling, okay? And I'm speaking of the 1830s. So, the 4 cardinal virtues that women must have then were, imagine a drum roll, piety, purity, domesticity, and horror of horrors, submissiveness. Now, this idea revolved around the woman being the centre of the family. She was to be considered the light of the home. So, true women were to hold and practice, and here is the first, piety. Religion was valued because it did not take a woman away from her proper sphere, the home, and because religion could and would and did control a woman's longings. Purity, virginity. Can we spell that? No. Virginity, a woman's greatest treasure, must not be lost until her marriage night, and married women had to remain committed only to their husbands. Submission. True women were required to be as submissive and obedient to their husbands as little children, because men were regarded as women's superiors, and they were made by God's appointment. Domesticity, the 4th and last rule. A woman's proper place was in the home, and her role as a wife was to create a refuge for her husband and children. Cooking, needlework, making beds, tending flowers were considered naturally feminine activities, whereas reading anything other than religious biographies was totally discouraged. And as the search and the quest and the desire and the want and the necessity for this true woman within the cult of domesticity continued and it began. One thing is to note the emphasis on the kinds of trade-off that took place within this cult, meaning that women might very well willingly choose to accept the role of domesticity in return for security, material comfort and protection. How husbands may rule and peculiar responsibilities for women stress what women gain by acquiescing to a man's authority. Just think on that. Mr. Thomas Day just wanted to find a wife. He had tried all the usual ways. He'd been educated at Oxford and met plenty of eligible young women, sisters of his peers, and many young women in society, including one to whom he became engaged. But Day was not a charming man, and his demand for perfection in a companion, combined with his disdain for personal hygiene, quickly ended that engagement. He moved on to other women, who also showed no promise, although he needn't have waited long, because Day was living in an era, the mid-18th century, that was in the process of setting up a structure that would turn every woman into the domestic goddess he sought, both submissively and good in the kitchen, the light of the home. Day, this smelly man, prized female virtue and purity, and he was greatly inspired by the works of Rousseau. And Rousseau had written in his novel Emile that women should be weak and submissive and passive, and early learned to submit to injustice and to suffer the wrongs inflicted on her by her husband without any complaint whatsoever. There's another. Incidentally, in 1745, Rousseau met Thérèse Levasseur, a barely literate laundry maid who became his lover and later his wife. And according to Rousseau's own account, Thérèse bore him 5 children, all of whom were deposited at the Foundling Hospital shortly after birth, and almost certain sentence of death in one of those, and his abandonment of his children was later to be used against him by Voltaire. And the quarrel and hatred between these two literary giants, well, anyway, I digress. So Mr. Day, the smelly man who couldn't find a wife, and this is definitely this is true and definitely creepy, he adopted 2 foundlings, girls, from an orphanage, and using Rousseau's maxims, he wanted to educate them to be the perfect wife, and 2 would ensure that at least one of them worked out. He adopted a 12-year-old and an 11-year-old, I mean, positively creepy, whom he renamed Sabrina, Sydney and Lucrezia. And he took them to France to educate them in isolation. The girls became ill, and they quarrelled incessantly. He decided to give up on Lucrezia, who he didn't think could satisfy him intellectually. Sabrina, he felt, was still a possibility, but her character had to be further strengthened. And after dropping hot wax on her arms and hearing her screams, he gave up in despair. There is no record at all of what happened to these girls. And he never did create the perfect wife. He married some poor soul called Esther Milnes, an heiress who wrote bad poetry. All women of a middle class and upwards, all they used to do all the time was embroider and write terrible poetry. The couple subsequently moved to an estate at Stapleford Abbots. Anyway, he was thrown off his horse and broke his neck. And I bet Esther, she laughed away all to the bank. So, continuing with our search, we find that a wife was to be, and this is the expression that went through the ages, the angel in the house. How many of you here consider yourselves, and how many of you out there who are watching from your settee in your bath, how many of you here consider yourself to be an angel in your house? Well, I'd pop to the chemist. You can get pills for that complaint. Right, according to a poem written in 1854 by Mr. Patmore, who held up his own wife Emily as a model for all women, his angel, Emily, was passive and powerless, meek, charming, graceful, sympathetic, self-sacrificing, pious, and above all, pure. And here is a small section of his Angel in the House poem. If you need a bucket to... Never mind. Man must be pleased, but he to please is a woman's pleasure. Down the gulf of his condoled necessities, she casts her best. She flings herself. How often flings for naught and yokes her heart to an icicle or whim, whose each impatient word provokes another, not from her, but him, while she, too gentle even to force his penitence by kind replies, waits by, expecting his remorse, with pardon in her pitying eye. I mean, please. This was published in 1854, and it became increasingly popular through the rest of the 19th century and continued to be influential into the 20th century. Now, for Virginia Woolf, the author, the repressive ideal of women represented by the angel in the house was still so potent that she wrote in an essay in 1931, if women were to achieve as writers, they had to escape from their traditional nurturing and domestic role and kill that angel in that house. So, this cult of domesticity deprived women's options for work, for education, for voicing opinions, or for supporting reform. And arguments between the genders led to pronouncement that women were incapable of effectively participating in the realms of politics, commerce, or public service. And women were best seen and best suited to parenting. And also, because of these expected behaviours, women were assumed to make excellent teachers of younger children. So that was one of the first public jobs that, apart from in big stately homes, which took up 70% of jobs for young girls from the age of 10 up until they died because they had no other prospects in stately homes. But that's the subject of another talk I do. But anyway, so a case in point, the Bronte sisters were obliged to find support for themselves when marriage eluded them. And except, of course, for Charlotte, who was married for 9 months to Arthur Bell Nicholls. Now, while I was doing this research, I came across this sort of conspiracy theory, and it was so interesting to do with the Brontes, so interesting that I've included it. And it says that Emily, Anne, and Branwell, the brother, were all poisoned by their father's curate, the aforesaid Arthur Bell Nicholls, and he was aided and abetted by Charlotte, and Charlotte later married this Nicholls before herself succumbing to poison at his hands the following year. So if you looked it up online, you get all the details about that. Anyway, all three received education that prepared them to be teachers, and all three spent time as governesses with universally unhappy results. And then, here we are, 19th century, there appeared on the horizon a woman who was an icon. Everybody adored her. She was wonderful. Now, who was that woman? Queen Victoria, characterised as the domestic age par excellence, epitomised by little Queen Victoria, who came to present a kind of femininity which was centred on the family, motherhood, and respectability. But was she? The author of a book in 2012, based on diaries and letters, tell a different story. And this book, entitled Magnificent Obsession by Helen Rappaport, reveals a story from Queen Victoria of manipulation, conflict, intimidation, emotional blackmail, fevered attempts by Victoria's children to escape the clutches of their domineering and needy mother. And Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were pretty bloody awful parents to their 4 sons and 5 daughters. And she hated being pregnant. She had prenatal, postnatal depression. She didn't breastfeed her children. And she thought they were horrible little dribbling things. And she was not in the least bit maternal. And Prince Albert was a martinet. He wanted his children to fulfill their intellectual potential. And Queen Victoria's relationship with Albert was a tempestuous one, punctuated with many, many rows. And he chided her in a letter. "It's a pity you find no consolation in the company of your children. The trouble lies in the mistaken notion that the function of a mother is to be always correcting, scolding, and ordering them about," he wrote. So she doesn't come across in this book, does she, as the little darling, little rat, fat, round little mummy that we know. And her 5 daughters fared particularly badly as their mother clung to them and tried to ruin their lives and arrange their marriages. Oh, I've known mothers like that. As a result, the resentful princesses fought back, becoming early champions of female independence. Hurrah! So this household was not the chocolate box image of gorgeousness. It was a place of simmering tensions. No wife would murder her husband while he was doing the washing up. My husband and I were perfectly happy for 20 years, and then we met each other. But for all her subjects knew that Victoria, accompanied by her beloved husband, surrounded by her many children, in the sumptuous but homely surroundings of Balmoral Castle, was an icon of 19th century middle-class femininity and domesticity. And during the reign of Victoria, a woman's place was definitely in the home, as domesticity and motherhood were still considered by society at large to be a sufficient emotional fulfillment for females, the angel in the house. Now, one of the most famous books of the Victorian age is the Book of Household Management, with a history of the origin, properties and uses of all things connected with home life and comfort by, yes, Isabella Mary Beeton, first edition, 1861. It's a useful source because it's the best example of Victorian advice literature aimed at the middle classes and the middle class housewife and her household staff. And she tells the reader what motivated her to actually write this book. And her aim was to educate the housewife in order that she might achieve the perfect home. And she goes on to tell us that what motivated me in the first instance is an attempt at work like this was the discomfort and the suffering which I had seen brought upon man by household management. And I always thought there is no more fruitful source of family discontent than a housewife's badly cooked dinners and untidy ways. Men are now so well served out of doors at their clubs, well-ordered taverns and dining houses that, in order to compete with the attraction of these places, a mistress must be thoroughly acquainted with the theory and practice of cookery, as well as perfectly conversant with all the other arts of making and keeping a comfortable home for their husband. In her introduction to the first edition, she demonstrates the acceptance of the ideology of the separate spheres, the woman at the home, the man in public, and he states this clearly that women alone are to blame for everything that is not welcoming for the man to return to. All of this, everything, is the woman's responsibility. She died of puerperal. She died of a fever in February 1865, almost certainly caused by the failure of the attending doctor to wash his hands before delivering her 4th child. She was just 28. Now, I'm going to read you an extract from a 1950s home economics textbook intended for high school girls, and it's teaching them how to prepare for married life and domesticity. Now, I want you to bear in mind Mr. Patmore's poem, The Angel in the House, that was written in 1854, then Isabella Beeton's book in 1861, and here we are 89 years later, and this is published, and it's unbelievable. And once again, gentlemen, keep calm. This is 2020. Don't expect any of this. If you'd been born back in, 89 years after 1861, you could have, you might have been lucky, but prepare yourself because this is unbelievable. Have the dinner ready. Plan ahead, even the night before, to have a delicious meal on time. This is a way of letting him know that you've been thinking about him and are concerned about his needs. Most men are hungry when they come home, and the process and the prospects of a good meal are part of the warm welcome needed from a wife. Prepare yourself. Take 15 minutes to rest so that you will be refreshed when he arrives. Touch up your makeup, put a ribbon in your hair, and be fresh looking. He has just been with a lot of work-weary people, and be a little jolly and a little more interesting. His boring day may need a lift. Clear away the clutter. Make one last trip through the main part of the house just before your husband arrives, gathering up school books, toys, papers, etc. Then run a dust cloth over the table. Your husband will feel as if he has reached a haven of rest and order, and it will give you a lift too. Prepare the children. Bloody hell. Well, it takes a few minutes to wash the children's hands and faces, and if they are small, comb their hair, and if necessary, change their clothes. They are little treasures, and he would love to see them playing that part. Minimize the noise. At the time of his arrival, eliminate all noise of washer, dryer, dishwasher or vacuum. Try to encourage the children to be quiet. Be happy to see him and greet him with a warm smile and be so glad to see him. Some don'ts. Don't greet him with problems or complaints. Don't complain if he's late for dinner. Count this as a minor compared with what he might have had to have gone through the day, and he will not, most definitely, he will not want to hear about your day. And why should he? Make him lean back in a comfortable chair and slit his throat. Oh no. Make him lean back in a comfortable chair or suggest he lie down in the bedroom. Have a cool or warm drink ready for him and arrange his pillow and offer to take off his shoes. Or take off his head. Speak in a low, soft, soothing and pleasant voice. Allow him to relax and unwind and listen to him. You may have a dozen things to tell him yourself, but the moment of his arrival is not the time. Let him talk first and make the evening his. Never complain if he does not take you out to dinner or to other places of entertainment. Instead, try to understand his world of strain and pressure, his need to be home and relax. And the goal? Try to make your home a place of peace and order where your husband can relax. Or he could come home to this. Come in, darling, don't expect to bloody find the dishes done and the floors a shine. Observe the crumbs and the toys galore and the smudgy prints upon that bloody door. The little ones we shelter here don't thrive on a spotless atmosphere. They're more inclined to disarray, and carefree means messy play. Their needs are great, their patience small. All day I'm at their bloody beck and call. It's mummy come and mummy this. Painted pictures booked piled high, my floors unshined. The bloody day goes by. Some future day they'll flee this nest, and I at least will get some rest. The best way to get a husband to do anything is to suggest that he's too old to do it. the way I figure it, when my husband comes home from work, if the kids are still alive, I've done my job. Husband to wife. I've been thinking. I'm the man of this house, so starting tomorrow, I want you to have a hot, delicious meal waiting for me the second that I walk through the door. Afterwards, while watching ITV Sport and relaxing in my chair, you'll bring me my slippers and run me my bath. And then when I'm done with my bath, guess who's going to dress me and comb my hair? Wife, the funeral director. Yea, though I walk through the valley of laundry, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy perspective and sense of humour, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me with the assistance of a takeaway. Surely clutter and confusion shall follow me most of the days of my life, but I shall dwell in a happy home forever. Gentlemen, according to several studies, men with a higher education are more likely to pick up and pitch in on the domestic front. Psychologist Coleman, author of The Lazy Husband, How to Get Men to Do Parenting and Household, suggests that the more a man is educated, the more able they are to put women on an equal footing and assume a balanced role in the household. And interestingly, research shows that men who delay fathering children until their late 20s and early 30s move away from the neighbourhood they grew up in and have less frequent contact with their parents, or who have been divorced and remarried, are more likely to do housework. There you go. Still, around the house, men generally do less, especially if he's the primary breadwinner, adding to which is some women's difficulty in delegating housework. Some women do find this difficult. They are frightened to give a man the hoover in case the man can't work the hoover, break the hoover, and then they've nothing to clear up the dust with. And the broom stops with whoever spends the most time at home. Men's resistance to housework starts in childhood. From an early age, men are preoccupied with power and status. Just watch any boy playing with an Action Man figure, and they may assert their independence by refusing to do something they've been asked to do. And while men feel they are pretty good compared with their fathers, they fail to factor in that their wives are also doing a lot more than their own mothers did. I'll just throw this one in. Men who do dishes do better in the bedroom. And I don't mean changing the sheets. And harmony over housework may also yield happier children. And Coleman, the author, reveals that the men who do housework frequently have kids who do better in society. Women's time in housework declined throughout the 65 to 2010 period, with the most decline between 65 and 85. Men's housework time doubled between 65 and 89, when it reached a high of 11 hours a week, and that it's now dropped back to 9 hours a week. Women are estimated to do 1.6 times the amount of housework as men, on average, with wives averaging 1.7 times more housework of husbands, and married mothers averaging 1.9 times the housework of married fathers. And changes are concentrated in core housework. Women's time in other housework has changed little. Men's has increased because houses are bigger, home renovation more prominent, and household finances more complicated to manage. The Office of National Statistics tells us that women are still doing 40 to 50% more housework on average than men, and men spend around 16 hours a week doing chores, while women clock up 27. My partner always thought he did an equal share, as he was a feminist, but he didn't. I've come to the conclusion that men believe in housework fairies, or that somehow we've had magical houses that just self-clean themselves, and I've decided to believe in them too. Hence our house is an absolute mess. I do more chores than my significant other because he wasn't taught by his mum to do them properly. So they're always really half-hearted, which makes him and the house sloppy. I'm trying to train him, which has resulted in lots of rolled up newspaper smacks, but it's very hard going. Statistically, due to marriage, men have less stress and typically live longer than unmarried men. Married women, however, have more stress and live shorter than unmarried women. A married woman with a cat, however, on average, lives the same length of time as a single woman without a cat. And single women with cats live the longest of all. And housework is the only activity at which men are allowed to be consistently inept because they're thought to be so competent at everything else. And does housework even matter? Anne of Green Gables perhaps said it best when she pleaded, "Can I go right now? Without washing my dishes? I'll wash them when I come back, but I cannot tie myself down to anything as unromantic as dishwashing at this thrilling moment." Some good housekeeping comments. It's time to clean out the fridge when something closes the door from the inside. Just sweep the room with a glance. When writing your name in the dust on the furniture, don't put the date. I'm 18 years behind with my ironing. Well, there's no use doing it now because nothing will fit. I'm personally inclined to approach housework the way governments treat dissent. Ignore it until it revolts. When Virginia Woolf wrote of the need to kill the angel in the house in 1931, little did she realise that this angel had been very seriously wounded during the First World War, 1918. When Virginia stepped into the River Ouse with her pockets laden with rocks in 1941, the angel also was fast approaching its death. The 2 world wars changed women's lives forever. When men went to fight, women were called upon to leave their homes and domesticity and to fill the jobs these men had left behind. This, along with the feminist movement of the 60s and the 70s, heralded the demise of the cult of domesticity, and over time until the present day. So, the window has been left open, releasing these angels of the house so that they can fly out and fly away into a bigger, brighter, wider world. So, dust if you must, but wouldn't it be better to paint a picture, write a letter, bake a cake, plant a seed, ponder the difference between want and need? Dust if you must, but there's not much time, with rivers to swim and mountains to climb, music to hear and books to read, friends to cherish and a life to lead. Dust if you must, but the world's out there, with the sun in your eyes and the wind in your hair, a flutter of snow and a shower of rain. This day will not come around again. So, dust if you must, but bear in mind, old age will come, and it's not kind. And when you go, and go you must, you yourself will make more dust. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody here and everybody out there. I hope you're out the bath now, otherwise your body will be quite wrinkled. If you have any questions or any little stories about domesticity or any views of the angel in the house who now, thank God, her wings have been clipped. Anybody, Any questions? Yes.
I have a fridge magnet given by a very good friend that says housework makes you ugly. And it's been with me for, 25 years.
That's what? Housework. Can I use that? Housework makes you ugly. So, okay. So let's twist that. What would make us beautiful? That is good. I like that. Yes. Gareth, have you opened this up to everybody out there?
I have, yeah.
Oh, has anybody typed in a question?
No, not yet. They're all
Yes. Wrinkled, pruny-like.
There is the other fridge magnet, of course, that says dull women have immaculate houses.
This is true. And
I keep that one special.
I like that. And there's another one. Oh, what's his name? He was a philosopher or something. He had a lot of hair and glasses, a lot of white hair and glasses. Oh, and he said, if a cluttered desk is a sight of a cluttered mind, what is a sign of a cluttered mind? What is an empty desk a sign of? Yeah. My husband's desk was so cluttered, he couldn't even see his computer screen because there was so much stuff in front of it. And I used to take piles of stuff from the bottom, because he probably hadn't looked at it for about 2 years, from the bottom and put it in a bag and shove it somewhere, and he'd never notice. I cleaned out his wardrobes once because he only wore the same things, put something on a Monday, and he'd still got it on the previous Monday. So I had a clear out of his clothes. And for some reason, he discovered that his wardrobes were quite empty, and he wanted to know where all his clothes had gone. And why hadn't I asked his permission to get rid of these clothes? And would he ever see them again? And I said, well, you might see them on the news. Some man or woman wearing them from the third world, and then you'll feel comforted that these clothes have gone to a very happy home. Any questions yet? Gareth?
Nothing yet. They're very, very shy by the looks of it.
Oh. Well, while we're waiting to see if anybody wants to ask a question, I'm doing another talk, which is in December, 3rd of December or something like that, but you'll get notification. And this is one I wrote about a few years ago, because I'm not a lover of Christmas. Hang on. I'm not a lover of Christmas, but I can see why people like it. So I've written a talk called So This is Christmas. And unfortunately, I can only give that talk just before Christmas, because any other part of the year is not very reverend. Is that the word? Relevant. Reverently relevant. So do look out for it, because actually it's one of my favourites. This one, for all that was supposed to be a humorous look at domesticity, is quite serious, because when you think of all those years that women's place was just in the home and they were the angel of the house, well, thank heaven things have changed. Have they all gone, Gareth?
No, they're still here.
Oh.
But they're silent.
Hello. Now, I'm talking to you out there. Do you have any little stories you'd like to relate, short, that you can type in very quickly and we can read out to this captive audience here? Are there any domesticity thingies in New Zealand, because I know people are watching from New Zealand, that are different than we would do here in the UK? Anything?
They might have to clean their swimming pools.
Anything, Gareth?
No, I'm afraid not.
Well, I think...
Hang on. We've got something here. Hang on.
Oh.
So from Lisa Mills. Hi, Lisa.
Oh, hi, Lisa.
She says, hi, Max. When you visit an extremely tidy, immaculately cleaned house, what do you think?
I'm filled with sadness. And not so much that. I don't mind untidiness. I don't like filth. but I don't mind untidiness. But when somebody's house is devoid of a plant, a book, a vase, a picture on the wall, I always liken it to that I've arrived just before the Pickford's van is coming to take the heavy stuff. And then I say, "Are you moving?" And they say, "No." But I don't know, it might be psychological. If people's homes are like that and we're all different, so I'm not like that, I've got a lot of clutter. Maybe it's a way that they can have their visitors hone in just on them, not on everything that they have surrounding them. You know, that's a bit mean, but that's what I think. What does Lisa think?
I don't know, she'll type an answer in a minute.
Oh, this is weird, isn't it? It's like having a
Says,
Ouija.
that's okay because it won't be mine.
Ah.
And we've got a message from Penny Thompson.
Oh, that's my sister. Yeah.
Okay, that's all we've got for now.
Well, what did she say?
That's it. She just says, "Hi, sis."
Oh. Could you tell her this isn't the forum for just casual hellos?
We've got a message from Honey Russell. She says, "After 28 years volunteering at our local hospice, I've never heard a patient say, 'I wish I'd vacuumed more.'"
Good. That's good. I like that, honey.
That's it for now, I'm afraid.
That's it for now.
Mags, what you saying about giving Ian stuff away, I remember, some years ago, I was given this sweatshirt which really wasn't, I didn't like it very much, but I had to say I was really pleased with it. And at the earliest opportunity gave it away. And I was at the Molesey Carnival and somebody walked by and I said, "Oh, do you know, I used to have one just like that." And she went, "I think it's yours."
How lovely.
Oh. Really give it to.
That is lovely. I don't know. Any more questions from you lovely people out there in the ethos?
What's your process for writing all that? Is it just research?
Research. Every lecture, every chat, talk I do is initially commissioned by the Royston Pike Lecture Series. So I come up with the title. They advertise the title in their booklets and all over the place. And then I sit and research. So for about 2 or 3 months, because I have about 9 months to write it, so I gather all the information I can, and then I have to join as much of it together, take the more complicated text of stuff, simplify it. Then I have to write links so that it all links together, that it definitely has a beginning, a middle and an end. And then I have to condense it all down to 45 or 50 minutes. So that means I've got to go through all the stuff again. And then when I think I've got it finished, I'll find something else so that I can be adding to or taking away up to the day before I give the lecture the next day. But I will say the process of researching through going to the libraries online, of course, from the vast library of books that we have at home, through talking with people and I find it very enjoyable putting it all together. So I've done this one. I've got from the butler to the scullery maid, a living and working in a stately home, and this is not Downton Abbey. I've got loves, laughs and lies in literature, and lying is so much more fun than love. That's another one. I've got a humorous look at the history of the toilet. The men love that one. Oh, the talks I've given to the men. And when I say to them afterwards, have you got any stories you'd like to tell me about toiletry stuff? Oh my God, their hands are up like Exocet missiles. And some of the stuff they tell me, my goodness, if you couldn't print it. So there's that one. Women travelling alone from the early 19th century, all the stuff they took with them, all the stuff they had to wear, what they couldn't do, what they could do. I mean, that's hilarious. The Christmas one, serious one, an overview of World War I on the Western Front and at home. And the one I'm writing now that I'm presenting for this Royston lecture series is Everyone Seems Normal Until You Get to Know Them. And it's a humorous look at relationships, whether it's with your bike, your cat, your husband, your lover, the woman next door, whatever. And that's what I'm writing now. So maybe if I'm invited here to do that, I could do that talk. But yeah. Oh, and the Foundling Hospital. I do one on the Foundling Hospital too. Yeah. Any more questions?
Well, I've got a few comments as well. So
Oh, comments.
when I was growing up, we had a parrot who had a cage. If we started hoovering, then the parrot would scratch the detritus at the bottom of the cage out onto the floor. So parrots do housework too. We've got a comment from Beverly Brock. She said a clean house means no internet connection. Pauline Wood says, well done, Max. I agree, domesticity is overrated. We've got Lisa again. She said, my dear mother-in-law, normally uncomplaining, said her back hurt a bit because she'd pull the oven out to clean behind her. She was 83.
Oh, bless.
We've got Pauline, I believe in the housework fairy too, and just go out and have fun. And then the last comment is from your sister again, from Penny. Is it right to assume that all men believe that if they do any housework, we should always go down on our knees and kiss their feet because we really don't deserve such favours?
Oh, Penny. I hope Paul's not listening to that. And I'll leave you with the fact that the measure of this is to do with the talk I'm doing now, but never mind. The measure of a good, sound, loving, happy relationship is you'll never see it mentioned on Facebook. Thank you very much to everybody out there. Thank you to everybody in here.